Let yourself relax. That's right. That's right. Let yourself become even more physically relaxed now as you focus even more on the sound of my voice. My voice begins to be the only thing that you hear. My voice begins to be the only thing that you concentrate on. Tuning out any other thoughts, any other distractions, focusing on me and only me. Let yourself relax, let yourself go, let yourself focus only on me and on the words that you hear from this video. And as you listen to my voice, I want you to think of that thing that you would like to overcome, that fear that holds you back. Let go of that thing holding you back, because the reality is that all fear is simply just a fear of an idea. Nobody's ever afraid of an actual object. They are simply afraid of the idea of the object. And if we tell your mind, we teach your mind, and we show your mind that that idea is something that you hold power over, it does not hold power over you. It is something you realize can be overcome. It is not something that controls you, but it is something that you control. And your mind, up until now, may not have realized that it had as much control over this fear as it did. Right now, I want you to think of that moment that caused you to start being afraid. Maybe your mind can jump right to that exact moment. Maybe it knows it was a triggering moment where you first started to become afraid of this thing or this idea. Or maybe your mind doesn't know. If your mind can't think of that specific first moment where you started to feel afraid of this thing, I want you to just create it. Imagine a similar moment that would cause you to be afraid. But I want you to hold an idea, a story, if you will, of the first time that you felt or experienced this fear. And I want you to imagine right now that you're sitting in a movie theater. You're sitting in a movie theater with nobody else there. It's a private theater just for you. And I want you to imagine that in a moment, this story, this thing that started your fear, is about to play on the movie screen. But before it starts to play, I want you to imagine that you suddenly become like a ghost. I want you to imagine that you float out of your body sitting in this movie screen, sitting in this movie theater. And I want you to imagine just hovering like a ghost. And you just notice and you look down and you see yourself sitting in this theater and you see yourself looking at this screen. And in a moment, that screen is going to start playing this very moment that started your fear. This moment that started it all. And as that moment plays on the screen now, I want you to just watch yourself watching that event. That's right. As a ghost hovering over yourself, sitting in this theater, watching this event play on the screen, just notice, just watch yourself watching this moment. And as it goes by, I want you just to allow yourself to see it happen on the screen. See yourself seeing it happen. That's right. That's right. Just notice this experience and notice that moment. Watch for that moment where your mind suddenly became afraid. I want you to imagine I suddenly hit the rewind button and you can watch that same thing happening just in reverse. You just watched it happen at first, but now imagine it's going in the opposite direction. It looks kind of strange that it's going in reverse now. That same moment that started your fear is going in reverse, and for some reason you don't know why it's going in reverse. It's going in the opposite direction, and it doesn't make sense. It looks how ridiculous going in the opposite direction until it reaches the very beginning now. And I want you to imagine I hit play again. This time it's in fast forward, twice as fast. It goes twice as fast. It goes right through. And in fact, it's going so fast that again, it looks ridiculous how fast that this moment is going. It's playing just in such a speed that you can barely even make out what's happening. Everyone's talking really fast like Mickey Mouse, and it's going really ridiculous, and then it goes fast until it ends now. And I hit rewind in twice as speed. Now this time it's going twice as fast, just in reverse, twice as fast in reverse. Everyone's moving backwards, things are moving backwards, looking really ridiculous, looking really strange, going all the way back to the beginning now. And I want you to imagine as you still experience yourself as if you were a ghost floating above your body. Now imagine just floating back into that seat. Imagine just being in that theater. And imagine this time I play it in 3 times speed. Imagine it goes just as fast this time, 3 times speed, all the way to fast. It goes so fast you can't make out. It's just confusing all the way to the end and now. And I rewind again 3 times speed. There's going backwards, people moving in just a weird way. It just looks silly and you don't know what's happening all the way back to the beginning now. That's right. And I fast forward again, 4 times speed. It's going so fast you can barely make out, just moving the speed of lane. You don't know what happens. It's just over now. That's right. And rewind 4 times speed all the way back to the beginning. It's just so scrambled up and you move backwards and not squared, and it's done now. Just notice what you feel. It's become a mess. It's become jumbled. It's become confused. To allow that memory to go back and forth, your mind doesn't make sense of it in the same way that it used to. See, your mind would constantly replay that story every time you were in a situation where it might come up again. But as your mind already starts to notice and feel much more at ease than it ever used to with the idea of this thing, I want you to imagine that you're suddenly transported from this movie theater into a long hallway now. And in this hallway, it is filled with doors. And behind each door is a part of your mind. It's a memory, it's a thing, it's some part that represents who you are. But I want you to look down to the end of the hallway and notice this door at the end. And you know exactly what is behind this door as you start to walk towards it now. But it is not the thing that you are afraid of that is behind this door. It is simply just a representation of the thing that you are afraid of. And as you open this door now, I want you to notice what is in this room. It is a completely empty room with the exception of a giant box. Notice this giant box. It's almost as big as you are. In fact, it is huge. But inside of this box is, again, not your fear, but the representation of your fear. Your mind is not afraid of the representation, only of the fear, but not even of the fear, but just of the fear, the idea of the fear itself. But as you notice, this representation is something that actually makes you curious to notice what your fear looks like. You've never seen the fear, you've only just felt the fear. But inside this box is what the fear looks like, what it feels like, the representation of that fear. And now this box is huge, and your mind starts to already think, what is in this box? What could be in this box because it is so big? But in a moment, I'm going to have you open this box, and when you do, your mind is going to be quite surprised, because what is in this box is not at all like what your mind thought it would be. As you open this box now, I want you to look inside and notice it is completely empty with the exception of a tiny rubber ball. That is all that is in this box, is simply just a little rubber ball. And I want you to reach inside this box and take out this ball and hold it in your hand. And notice how small it is, and so small that it can fit in your hand. And your mind is a little bit puzzled why something as small as this rubber ball was put inside this giant box. But that is your mind's doing. Your mind didn't know. Your mind wanted to keep you safe. So your mind put this little tiny rubber ball, this little tiny fear in this giant box to keep you away from it. So that it would hold you back. So that it would, or what it thought, keep you safe. But your mind didn't know that your life would be fine even with the fear. Your mind didn't know that you would be completely safe even with the fear. Your mind just was doing its best to try to keep you safe, but in the process, it held you back. Because your mind is not perfect. Sometimes it makes mistakes, and yet in this moment you realize this thing that you've been afraid of, this representation, is so small that you can hold it in your hand. And I want you to actually just begin to squeeze that thing and notice how squishy it is. You can actually squeeze it and squish it in your hand and notice that represents how much power you actually have over it. See, your mind represented it as this mystery thing inside a giant box, but when you actually investigated it, you found that it was nothing but this tiny squishy thing you can hold in the palm of your hand. And I want you to notice what's on the other side of the box is there's actually a safe embedded into this wall, and the door of the safe is open right now. The size of the safe is actually pretty similar to the size of the ball, the representation of the fear you're holding in your hand right now. And your mind already knows exactly what it has to do, is your mind is going to place this rubber ball, this fear, this representation of this thing you're holding in your hand inside the safe to let it go. Because when you let it go, it will let you go. When you let go of the fear, your fear will let go of you. I want you to take this rubber ball that you're holding in your hand, and I want you to just place it inside of the safe. Notice how perfectly it fits in that safe. It's just the right size. And in a moment, I'm going to have you close this safe and spin the dial on the front to lock it forever. There is no lock on this safe. It is a combination which your mind does not and cannot and will not ever know. And your mind knows that as soon as you spin the dial on this lock, as soon as you close that door and spin the dial, that is it. That is the end. This fear cannot and will not ever come back. Because it can't. How could it? If you choose to lock it up in a way that you can never gain access to again, there's no reason, there's no way for this fear to ever come back. And even if it were to come back, which it can't, your mind knows how small it is. Your mind knows how much you control it. Your mind knows how much you hold power over it in a way that it didn't realize until now. but I want you to close that safe in a moment. I'm going to count down from 5 to 1. Each number I count down from 5 to 1 prepares you to close this safe. When I reach the number 1, you slam that door shut and you spin that dial. 5, beginning to anticipate this fear being locked away forever. 4, as you get ready to shut down this thing that used to shut down you. To the number 3, as you know and you start to feel the peace and the freedom that will come with no longer being held back by this idea. Into the number 2, as you get ready to now close that door at the number 1, slam it shut, spin that dial, locking that safe, locking that fear forever. Notice what feeling has replaced that fear, and notice that feeling of freedom. Freedom. Freedom.